Jai Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavada Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavada Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavada Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Jasodanandana Jai Bhaja Janarandana Jaya Yasodanandana Jaya Jasodanandana Jaya Bhaja Janarandana Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Jasodanandana Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Paramahamsa Parivajika Charya School Tarasati Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Sri Sri Gauranitai Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Govardhana Dari Ki Jai Sri Sri Krishna Balaram Sri Giriraj Govardhana Ki Jai Gaura Premanandi. Oh, glorious to the assembled devotees. Oh, glorious to the assembled devotees. Oh, glorious to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Reading from Sri Caitanya Caritamrita. This is Adi-lila, chapter 10, 3 verses today, starting with text number 72. So we'll chant all of the Bengali as is very nicely been written up on the board here together, everyone, then we'll go back and read translations and purports. Prabhura Bhaduya Dui Purushottam Sanjay Vyakarane Dui Shishya Dui Mahashai Vanamali Pandita Saka Vikyata Jagate Sonara Mushala Hala Dekila Prabhura Hate Sri Chaitanyara Ati Priya Buddhimantakan Ajanma Ajnakari Teno Sevaka Pradhana. Someone else? Vaishnavis? Prabhura Paduya Dui. The Lord's two students, Purushottama, of the name Purushottam, Sanjaya, of the name Sanjaya, Vyakarane, studying grammar, Dui Sishya, two disciples, Dui Mahashaya, very great personalities. Translation: the 33rd and 34th branches were the two students of Caitanya Mahaprabhu named Purushottam and Sanjaya, who were stalwart students in grammar. They were very great personalities. We can repeat this one. The 33rd and 34th branches were the two students of Caitanya Mahaprabhu named Purushottam and Sanjaya, who were stalwart students in grammar. They were very great personalities. Purport: these two students were inhabitants of Navadvip and were the Lord's first companions in the Sankirtan movement. According to Chaitanya Bhagavat, Purushottam Sanjaya was the son of Mukunda Sanjaya, But the author of Sri Caitanya Caritamrita has clarified that Purushottam and Sanjaya were two people, not one. So text 73, I'll just read the translations, everyone, for the next two. Translation, Vanamali Pandit, the 35th branch of the tree, was very celebrated in this world. He saw in the hands of the Lord a golden club and plough. Purport, Vanamali Pandit saw Lord Caitanya in the ecstasy of Balaram. This is described vividly in Chaitanya Bhagavad Adi-lila, chapter 9. Text 74, translation, the 36th branch, Buddhimantakan, was extremely dear to Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu. He was always prepared to carry out the Lord's orders, and therefore he was considered to be a chief servant of the Lord. Purport, Sri Buddhimantakan was one of the inhabitants of Navadvip. He was very rich, and it is he who arranged for the marriage of Lord Caitanya with Vishnu Priya, the daughter of Sanatan Misra, who was the priest of the local zamindar. He personally defrayed all the expenditures for the marriage ceremony. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was attacked by Vayu Vyadi, derangement of the air within the body, Buddhimantakan paid for all requisite medicines and treatments to cure the Lord. He was the Lord's constant companion in the Kirtan movement. He collected ornaments for the Lord when he played the part of the goddess of fortune in the house of Chandrasekhar Acharya. He also went to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was staying at Jagannath Puri. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmanitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master has very kindly come, forced open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my most respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate garim yat kripatamaham vande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, the saviour of all fallen souls. By his grace, even a lame man can cross over mountains, a blind man can see stars in the sky, and a dumb man can recite eloquent Vedic poetry. So I couldn't research too much on Purushottam and Sanjaya, except to say that from Chaitanya Bhagavat there is one reference that, and I'll quote, the Lord embraced Purushottam or Sanjaya, because Prabhupada has clarified here they were actually two people. I think in Chaitanya Bhagavat it says he embraced Purushottam and drenched him with tears of love. So that's from Chaitanya Bhagavat. But apart from that, couldn't find a lot about those two early students of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But we did find quite a nice section on Vanamali Vipra, who's also mentioned here as the 35th branch of the tree. It's very celebrated in this world. And he saw in the hands of the Lord golden club and plough. So I'll read this. He's described as actually two personalities in the one body. And the first one we'll read about is Vanamali Thakur was an incarnation of Sudama Brahmana, who was afflicted by great poverty and obtained great wealth from the Lord. And that's, of course, from Gora Ganadeshti Pika, Kavikanapur. And here's a little bit. And this is actually from Chaitanya Mangala by Lord Chandas Thakur, a reference from the Madhya Kanda chapter 7 of Chaitanya Mangala. All glories to Gadadhar, Gauranga and Narahari. One who hears the transcendental pastimes of Lord Vishvambara will easily attain love for Krishna. Now listen to a wonderful pastime that took place in Navadvip. One day, Mahaprabhu sat in his home along with his intimate associates, his face beaming blissfully. The Lord was speaking nectarian words. Suddenly, a Brahmana named Vanamali arrived from East Bengal with his son. He was very happy to see the Lord and his devotees. In a choked-up voice, Vanamali said to himself, I became poor and lost my purity. So I've come here seeking the Lord's help. I'm sure that Vishvambara is none other than God himself. By seeing him, the abode of all transcendental knowledge, my heart is pacified and I've attained perfection. As one gets healthy by drinking nectar, similarly my sufferings have vanished simply by seeing Lord Gauranga. Lord Vishvambara looked compassionately upon the Brahmana and his son. He sang the glories of Hari and gave them the treasure of Krishna Prema. Vanamali and his son danced in ecstasy. Within a moment, their suffering disappeared. Lord Gauranga is the ocean of mercy and the best friend of the poor. The next day, Gaura Natharaj, the king of dancers, danced exuberantly in the midst of his Sankirtan party. Vanamali and his son became enchanted by the most extraordinary sight. Gauranga appeared as a beautiful young boy with the body the colour of a monsoon cloud. The Lord was wearing bright yellow cloth, held a flute and had a peacock feather in his hair. All of Gauranga's followers took forms as cowherd boys of Braja. Vanamali also saw Radharani and Shyamasundar in the topmost pleasure groves of Vrindavan. He saw Giriraj Govardhan, the Jamuna River, Bahulavan, Mandiravan, Madhuvan, and other places in Vrindavan. They saw the cows, gopas, gopis, Gopal, and the desire trees. Seeing that Madan Gopal had now appeared in Navadvip, Vanamali and his Brahmana son succumbed to ecstasy and fell flat on the earth. Then Vanamali Brahmana hiked up his dhoti and jumped around roaring, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Mahaprabhu stopped his captivating dance and had someone restrain the Brahmana. In this way, Lord Gauranga frees anyone from his karmic reactions and gives him love of God. Gaurasundar is decorated with a celestial garland and sandalwood paste. He has no material attachments. Gaurahari is known as Nava Vidhata Ratna, the ever-youthful, gem-like supreme controller. The Lord has nothing to do, yet he acts in the material world for the benefit of others. Gauranga freely distributes Krishna Prem to everyone. Maladhara, who had formerly carried Lord Krishna's Venu and Murali flutes in Brajabhumi, later appeared as Vanamali Pandit, who was very dear to Lord Caitanya. So two personalities there in Vanamali Pandit. And finally, we'd like to read a little bit about the 36th branch, who is the greatly fortunate Buddhimanta Khan. It's about a page and a half here from the chapter 15 of the Chaitanya Bhagavat. This is the first Adi-kanda. And this is a brief explanation of this chapter, condensed nectar, written by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, his commentary regarding the marriage of Lord Chaitanya to Sri Vishnupriya. This chapter mainly describes the marriage pastimes of Gaura Vishnupriya. Nimai Pandit regularly taught his students in the Chandi Mandap, situated in the courtyard of Mukunda Sanjaya. If the Lord, who is the protector of Sanatana Dharma, found any student without tilak on his forehead, he would embarrass him in such a way that the student would never return to study without tilak. The Lord would say, the forehead of a Brahmana that is not decorated with tilak is as good as a crematorium. This is the injunction of the scriptures. Whenever the Lord saw his students without tilak, he told them that they had certainly not performed their morning rituals. Saying this, the Lord sent them back home. When the students returned after duly marking their bodies with tilak, then they were eligible to study with the Lord. Nimai Pandit joked and teased everyone. He particularly made fun of the Srihata residents' pronunciation of words. The Lord, however, never joked or laughed with any woman. As soon as he saw a woman on the road, he immediately came to the side and gave way. Conjugal activities as exhibited in the pastimes of Krishna Chandra in this world were not displayed during the appearance of Gaura. That is why Mahajans and their followers who know the science of Gaura Krishna never address Gaurasunda as Nadia Nagara, or the amorous hero of Nadia, after the style of Krishna, who is the personification of conjugal mellows. Simply by studying with the Lord for 1 year, students became expert in scriptural conclusions. Meanwhile, Sachimata, being anxious to marry her son for the second time, had Kashinath Pandit arranged the marriage of Nimai with the supremely devoted daughter of Raj Pandit Sanatan Misra of Navadvip. An intelligent aristocrat named Buddhimanta Khan personally agreed to bear the entire expense of the Lord's marriage. On an auspicious day, at an auspicious time, the festival of Adivas, or the appropriate rituals to be performed the day before the marriage, were performed with great pomp. Riding on a palanquin, the Lord arrived at the house of Raj Pandit at the auspicious time of dusk. Anyone can remember the Sanskrit word for the auspicious time of dusk. It's considered the most auspicious time to ever arrive anywhere. We mentioned it the last time we gave class. It's a beautiful word. It starts with go. Second one, Goduli. And Duli means dust. And it's the dust that's kicked up by the cows' hooves as they all are brought home, just as Krishna and Balaram did 5,000 years ago. So Goduli. If you ever arrive anywhere at dusk, you can say, oh, very auspicious, I'm arriving at Goduli. So that was the time that Mahaprabhu arrived on the day before his wedding at the house of his future father-in-law. So all the Vedic and social rituals were performed, and the marriage pastimes of Vishnupriya and Gaura, who are non-different from Lakshmi Narayan, were completed with great splendour. With a desire to please Lord Vishnu, Sanatan Misra offered his dearmost daughter to the hands of the Lord, and then also gave various gifts to his son-in-law. The next afternoon, sitting on a palanquin with Vishnupriya Devi, the Lord returned home amidst a continuous shower of flowers and the accompaniment of song, dance and music. When Lakshmi Narayan was seated inside the house, the entire universe began to glorify them. If a living entity hears the eternal marriage pastimes of Lakshmi Narayan, then he is cleansed of the desire for conjugal happiness that joins together male and female in this material world as enjoyer and object of enjoyment. At that time, his good intelligence is awakened and he understands that Lord Narayan alone is the enjoyer of the entire universe. When the Lord mercifully embraced Buddhimanta Khan, the happiness in his heart knew no bounds. So, got another place here. Let's see what this one's about. Right. There's a little more about Buddhimanta Khan. And, of course, this whole chapter 15 of the first Adi-kanda of Caitanya Bhagavat. The whole chapter is actually about Lord Chaitanya's marriage to Vishnupriya. It's very wonderful, and there were certain pastimes which, first of all, Buddhimanta Khan said when he offered to bear the expense for the entire wedding, that I do not want this to be another poor Brahman's wedding. Would you mind just sitting up? Is that okay? Fantastic. Just in the temple room? Yeah. Thank you so much. You can grab a chair. Yeah, Vasu's got you a chair. Would you be more comfortable? Grab a chair. Thank you. Yes, I do not want this to be just another poor Brahman's wedding. So he bore the entire expense of the Lord's second marriage. He was a rich man. He could do that. And he was intimately involved in many other pastimes of Mahaprabhu, as we read. So it's interesting that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had many devotees in all statuses of life. He had many renunciants We can think of just a few, such as the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, Haridas Thakur, the Lord's secretary in Jagannath Puri, was also in the renounced order of life. Gadadhar Pandit also. And there were many sannyasis also who Mahaprabhu had met on his 6 years of travelling. Swarup Damodar, of course, is the secretary of Mahaprabhu's. And there were many sannyasis that Mahaprabhu had met on his travels, 6 years travelling all over India. And many of them were much older than him and already sannyasis. And the Lord's 2 gurus, you could say, Ishwara Puri, his initiating spiritual master, and Keshava Bharati Maharaj, his sannyas guru. You cannot take sannyas, as Mahaprabhu did, from anyone except a sannyasi. So there were many renunciants in Mahaprabhu's orbit amongst his associates. And the Panchatattva, of course, we mentioned Gadadhar Pandit was the only one amongst those. But the Lord himself married twice in his youth. And Advaita Acharya and Nityananda Prabhu. We'll say a little bit about his being ordered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to become a Grihasta. Srivas Thakur also was Grihasta. So Mahaprabhu was very affectionate to all his devotees, whatever their statuses in life were. And on one of the visits to Puri that Nityananda Prabhu accompanied the other devotees, during that visit, Mahaprabhu took Lord Nityananda aside in what we might say in the modern vernacular for a very deep and meaningful conversation in a private place. And the Lord instructed Nityananda Prabhu, who was at that time single and probably in his early 30s, that Mahaprabhu was feeling great compassion for their fellow countrymen and women in the great land of Bengal, where they both had, of course, grown up. And he admitted that he couldn't go back there. He was a sannyasi, and he'd promised his mother, Sachi Devi, that he would reside in Jagannath Puri, which would mean that Sachi Devi would occasionally get news of her son's activities. And Mahaprabhu just lived in a very small room, actually, in Puri. Those of us who have been to the Gambhira, it's actually just 10 feet by 10 feet. That's where Mahaprabhu stayed, very small room. Of course, he would go out every day. He would go to Lord Jagannath's Mangal Arati, sometimes take a bath in the ocean before doing that. And he would go and visit his confidential associates staying in different places nearby. But he instructed Nityananda Prabhu, look, I'm staying here, and of course in those days, Bengal was a vast part of India. There was what was referred to as East Bengal and West Bengal. Of course, soon after, there was partition of India in 1947, and it was first of all known as East Pakistan, and then later on there was another big war, and it became known as Bangladesh. But formerly, such a vast part of India. So Mahaprabhu said, Nityananda Prabhu, who's going to deliver? You have to do it. Because I'm a sannyasi now, and I have to set a very high standard of the protocols and etiquette of a sannyasi. The sannyas ashram basically consists of lots of don'ts. Sannyasis can't do this, they can't do that, and they can't do the other thing. Very few do's. Whereas householders, there's lots of do's. Yes, householders can do this, householders can do that. And Mahaprabhu compared it to one small black dot of ink on a white cloth. Everyone will see the discrepancy and criticize. And as we heard so nicely from Mukunda Maharaj a couple of days ago, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so strict that he wouldn't even give an audience to King Prataparudra, who was a great devotee of Lord Jagannath initially, but eventually he, on the requests of his devotees, he did give his mercy to the king, but not wanting to be criticized. So Mahaprabhu instructed Nityananda, you have to get married. You have to become a householder, and in this way you'll be able to deliver all sorts of personalities throughout Bengal. You can go here, you can go there, you can talk to this one and that one. No one will criticize you. So on the direct order of the Lord, Nityananda Prabhu agreed to do that. And it's said that after marrying Vasudha and Janava, two sisters, he actually went to a town called Kadaha in Bengal, situated on the bank of the Ganga. And as was allowed for Brahmins in ancient times, they could approach wealthy landholders known as zamindars or kings and request a small piece of land to live on, where they could build a humble dwelling and have one or two cows and grow some fruits and vegetables. So Nityananda Prabhu, accompanied by his two wives and some of his associates, they went to the town of Kadaha, and Nityananda requested from the local zamindar, who was fishing with his friends on the bank of the Ganga at that time. He wasn't a particularly pious man. He wasn't on the same level of impiety as Ramchandra Khan, another zamindar. And we all know his very horrible activities. But still, this particular zamindar, he very sarcastically said to Nityananda Prabhu that the Lord would have to create it from water, a piece of land. So Nityananda Prabhu and the zamindar, he actually threw a piece of burning straw into the Ganga. But then by Lord Nityananda's inconceivable mystic power, a huge mass of land suddenly appeared where the zamindar had thrown this piece of burning straw. And Nityananda Prabhu took possession, much to the astonishment of the zamindar and his so-called friends. Nityananda fulfilled that sarcastic request, and this huge piece of land, which was attached to the rest of the land, suddenly appeared, and that's where Nityananda Prabhu built his house for himself and his two wives, and he led. And from there he would travel all over Bengal with his associates, preaching the Harinam Sankirtan movement. That house is still there. It's called Kunja Vatika. So, and of course, Nityananda Prabhu was able to convert, if you like, to the Sankirtan movement. So many different types of people, some very high class, some very low class, and lots in between, because he was a householder. And of course, Srila Prabhupada was immensely proud of his householder disciples who went all over the world and who he once famously said were greater than sannyasis, because they had done in many instances extraordinary feats of establishing the bhakti yoga, bhakti marg, all over the world. And of course, most famous amongst them, the three couples, and little Saraswati, who went to London on Prabhupada's direct order and established Krishna consciousness on very solid foundation, first of all in the UK and then all over Europe. It's said that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, when he sent his sannyasi disciples to Europe in the 1930s, he was hoping that they would create what is, I think, referred to in warfare as a beachhead, where one opposing force goes and establishes something significant, and then more soldiers come, and in that way gradually they can breach the defences of the enemy and so on. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was hoping, and according to some biographers, he was planning himself to go to the West and preach for 10 years. But it was not his disciples, though earnestly endeavouring, were not able to create, though they did create some disciples who were initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But after 2 or 3 years, at great expense to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, maintaining them in Europe, they were called back to India. So, but Prabhupada did not discriminate amongst his disciples who was wearing saffron cloth or white cloth, male, female. He expected all his disciples to embrace the same lifestyle as preachers, and to go here and there, everywhere, and preach the Sankirtan movement. And we saw, of course, in the case of the 3 couples who went to London, cultivating especially His Grace Sriman George Harrison Prabhu especially, and the other members of the most famous rock group of the day, the Beatles. They all did some service. John Lennon, of course, allowing Prabhupada and his disciples to stay at Tittenhurst Park in London for a considerable amount of time. But of course, and these illustrious personalities in the music world could see that the devotees, they were married, men and ladies. Even one of the couples had, Shyam Sundar and Malati, had their daughter Saraswati. So they, for all intents and purposes, all the personalities who they were cultivating there, and you know, the wonderful members of the Indian community who also stepped forward in London. Most of them were householders. So it was, one could very much relate, all those personalities could relate very much to these young couples coming as representatives of Srila Prabhupada. So in the same way, Nityananda Prabhu, who's actually in many places in Bengal more famous than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very wonderfully spread the Sankirtan movement throughout that part of the world. So, and of course there are many wonderful pastimes of Nityananda Prabhu. We ran out of time on the Lord's Appearance Day to tell all of them, but there are many wonderful pastimes which we can still churn this ocean of nectar. For example, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had his dream the night before the wonderful meeting of the 2 Lords, where a divine personality appeared on the chariot, and in his dream Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked this personality, "Who are you?" And Lord Nityananda Balaram responded, "I am your brother, and tomorrow we will meet and get to know each other." So, and of course the next day was the most wonderful of all meetings between the 2 Lords. And of course, perhaps that day or the next day happened to be Guru Purnima. And in India, anyone who has a guru, regardless of what sampradaya they may be a member of, whether personalist or impersonalist, they worship their gurus on this particular day, Guru Purnima, sometimes referred to as Vyas Puja also. So at that time also, Lord Chaitanya said, "O holy man, Nityananda, tomorrow is Vyas Puja and we will worship you." And that also happened. And another pastime is when Caitanya Mahaprabhu spotted Nityananda Prabhu's kopin on the clothesline, and he tore it down and ripped it up into thin strips and gave a piece to each one of his confidential associates and told them, wear this around your neck until it is no more. And they all did it. It was very much an in-house pastime, but nonetheless we thought we'd share it. So these wonderful personalities are there in Lord Chaitanya's sphere of influence. And of course, by hearing about them, our attachment to this material world and the very mundane and temporary activities which are going on here slackens, and we become attracted. Our mind becomes somewhat attracted to entering into this realm, which is the transcendental realm of spiritual happiness. And by the kindness of these two personalities, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, we get that opportunity. So Mahaprabhu's wedding was a very gorgeous affair. It's said that some persons came during the wedding to receive gifts, which is Indian culture is a little different to our Western culture. On our birthdays, Vaishnavas are meant to give presents to others. Where we may be attached to getting presents on our own birthdays from family and friends, but in Indian culture, the birthday person quite often gives or sponsors a feast or feeds their family out of loving reciprocation. So in the same way, on Mahaprabhu's wedding day, he had arranged for a profuse amount of garlands and sandalwood paste and pan to be distributed to all the guests who attended. And that included invited guests and also strangers, and even the dogs came and they were given garlands and sandalwood paste and pan. And some persons who were greedy, they came not once to receive their gifts, but they came twice or thrice. And this was observed by some of the organisers of the festivities. But Mahaprabhu said, no, let them come 3 times, no problem. It said that there was enough for 5 or 10 weddings, enough gifts to be distributed. So Krishna is famous, of course, Sad Aishvaya Puna. Word Puna means complete or full, just as we have the Purnimas, the full moons. So Sad Aishvaya, the 6 opulences, Krishna has unlimited reservoir of beauty, strength, wealth, fame, knowledge and renunciation. So Krishna can very easily manifest unlimited opulences, and he does. So everyone was completely satisfied and very happy on the occasion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's wedding. So I might stop here, everyone. Anyone have a question or a comment or a correction? Not sure if we have microphones. Oh, yes, we do have microphone. If anyone wants to ask, or otherwise the bell will ring. Vasu Shrestha has a question. The microphone's here, Vasu. Prabhu's just bringing it for you. Not sure if it's switched on, but just switching on now. You're getting linked in. Try it, Vasu, see if it's...
Well, just for the sake of continuity, so while some people ask a sensible question, I'll ask a question also. Budimanta Khan, so the surname Khan, that seems to be a Muslim name, or is it, so he was also a Muslim who was a great devotee of the Lord, or any aspersion on that?
Well, I can just speculate a little bit. Basically, my understanding, well, Budimanta is definitely a Vedic name, But Khan, I'm speculating a little bit here, could be, it sounds Islamic, Arab sounding. It could be, no, I probably shouldn't speculate. Do we have any Bengali devotees here? I don't think we do this morning, but it could or could not be. Yeah, don't want to dodge the question, but it may well be, and my reference would be to Prabhupada's name Day, as we mentioned also. Historically, Day, Mulik and Sil, and we know, yes, that Rupa and Sanatan received the honorific titles from the Nawab Hussain Shah of W. Khas and Sakara Malik. So Khas, Malik, and one would think Khan also, along with Sil, Day, and what is the other one? The Muliks, yeah. Are Arabic names because at that time in history, and for almost 700 years, large parts of India, and especially Bengal, were ruled by the invading forces from as far away as Arabia, but Persia, which is modern-day Iran and Iraq, Turkey and Afghanistan. So they were very much trying to change the Vedic civilization to an Islamic one, and in some, so it may well be an honorific title. We can try and somebody may want to Google that. Wonders of modern technology. Or Vasu, you can do that later if you want, or do it now, whatever. But that's just that's the best I can offer, Prabhu. I hope that's something. Thank you. Yes, we have Vaishnavi. She may know more than us.
You mentioned about how at Lord Chaitanya's wedding they were giving out gifts, and birthdays also Vaishnavas give out gifts. So how did that work? Because usually gifts are given according to the person and what they need. So how would they have catered for everyone? And what's the science behind that? How they gave the gifts?
It's specifically in regard to Mahaprabhu's wedding, you mean, or in general? Okay. You are from Indian background and culture. We are Malechas. We are not knowing much about these things. In Fiji, is it still a practice amongst Indian families to some degree, or has it become westernized now where the children get the presents? And how does it work in Indian culture? How did it work in Fiji? I thought you were from Fiji originally. Auckland, right? From Zimbabwe. Oh, very nice. I didn't know that, Vaishnavi. Sorry. But Gujarati culture, yeah.
I know my parents would usually, as you said, sponsor a feast or something, but because we grew up in the West also we receive presents, but yeah, there is some degree or there was some sense of giving and feeding the guests and things like that.
Well, we've seen here on previous Sunday feasts when we had pious Indian families sponsor the whole feast, and of course if we were told this is for one of the children's birthdays, so we would even sing happy birthday to the child, and the parents would be very happy, but then the parents and the children would actually serve the feast. Not only had they sponsored it to hundreds and hundreds of dollars, but the children would also help serve whoever's birthday it was, or and of course anniversaries and so on. So somehow or other it was going on, but over the course of time, of course, these customs do change. But microphones in, yeah.
I thought about something when you mentioned that about the kids. I remember I was listening to one of the classes by HG Prabhu, and he said he received something and then he didn't know what to do with it, and he also gave it as prashadam to someone. So I'm just thinking in terms of individually, when we give gifts to someone, then sometimes people want to get rid of stuff in their house, but you want to give something that is practical to a devotee like Tila or that's something useful or something for service like flowers if they're making gardens, they're practical gifts.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a very, very good point. Just in light of that, we'll end on this. And we heard the story direct, and he's no longer sadly with us in this world. But he told us, many of us, this story himself personally. And I'm just remembering great soul's name. He started the Hare Krishna movement. Bali Madan and Upendra. When Upendra was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in San Francisco very early, maybe 1967, he had nothing to give Prabhupada as Guru Dakshina, but he knew he should. So, and of course, he was not able to go out, or he may have tried to go out on the street in Haight-Ashbury and beg some money, but everyone was like him, homeless, penniless hippies. And no one had any money to give, so he thought, I have to give Prabhupada something for Guru Dakshin. And he had one quite, if I get it right, expensive beach towel, and he also had a baby blanket, which somehow or other he'd been keeping since his childhood. He was very sentimentally attached to this baby blanket. So he washed them and pressed them and made them very nicely, and he gave them to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada just looked at them, and he said, these are useless. But he said, no, never mind. And Upendra was crestfallen, but he said, and then Prabhupada said, never mind, I will use them for seats and cleaning. Now that's what happened to the beach towel.
Next morning, so Prabhupada put them out as a seat.
There you go. Prabhupada had utilised them. So, good point, yeah. And quite often in Vedic culture, Prabhupada did this himself at different functions. He would instruct the devotees to give all of the guests some money. Yeah, it may have only been a small amount, even a few rupees, but yeah, so distribution of charity, that's amongst the Brahminical prescribed duties, patan, yajan, yajana, dana, pratigraha, that accepting charity and also distributing charity, because Brahmins don't hoard. They only need a very small amount to maintain themselves day to day, so they never keep anything. If they have some excess, they'll give it away. Yeah. All right, the bell is tolled. Jai Sri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.